My wife recently described me as just her roommate to her friends, so I decided to make that her reality. I exposed everything, and then stood by as her carefully curated life unraveled, piece by piece. My name's Adam, I'm 30, and I recently watched my marriage fall apart in the most humiliating way imaginable. My wife, Melissa, 28, publicly reduced me to a background character in her life. After nearly 6 years together, 3 of them as husband and wife, I realized I had become nothing more than an accessory in her picture-perfect world. We met the way a lot of people do these days, out at a bar, surrounded by friends and fueled by casual conversation. It wasn't anything magical, no fireworks or violins, but she had this magnetic self-assurance that pulled me in immediately. She wasn't some stunning model walking off a runway, but she had this natural prettiness and charm that made her stand out in a room. We clicked that night, exchanged numbers, and a couple of weeks later, we were officially dating. The early days were the kind of stuff you see in montages: weekend getaways, lazy Sunday mornings, introducing each other to family and friends. Things felt effortless. Her parents weren't exactly welcoming. They had this cold, judgmental air. But I didn't let it bother me. We moved in together about a year in, and 2 years after our first date, I proposed. Nothing extravagant, just something heartfelt, just the two of us. We tied the knot 8 months later in a modest ceremony with close family and friends. No fanfare, just love. I had bought a house 6 months before the wedding, pouring my savings into a down payment after years of grinding at work. The house was under my name, every paper, every document, because I covered the full down payment. It wasn't about control, I just wanted us to have a solid foundation. For the first year, marriage was everything I imagined. We had a rhythm. Both of us working during the day, coming home to cook meals together, curling up on the couch to binge shows or talk about the future. There were even conversations about maybe starting a family in a couple of years. But now that I look back, I see the cracks that slowly began to spread. By the time we hit the second year of marriage, Melissa's priorities began shifting. She'd always been ambitious, working in marketing, but suddenly it became everything. She started staying late at the office, attending networking mixers, joining industry panels. She was never home. At first, I supported it. I figured this was her chance to climb the ladder, and I wanted to be the partner who backed her up. I picked up the slack, cleaning, groceries, and bills. I took on more and more without complaint. She told me she didn't want to stress about money yet and preferred to focus on her professional goals. I understood. Or at least I thought I did. Then the small things started happening. Our date nights began getting canceled, always due to work emergencies or last-minute meetings. Even when she was home, she wasn't really there. Her phone was glued to her hand, her focus somewhere else. And when I gently brought it up, she accused me of not being supportive. So I shut up. I told myself it was just a phase, that she'd find balance. But it only got worse. Our weekends, which used to be filled with laughter and plans, turned into solo errands and awkward silences. She'd always have something with her friends, brunches, shopping days, girls' nights, and I was never included. It stopped feeling like a partnership and more like two people silently cohabiting. Still, I clung to hope. So when, out of the blue, she invited me to a dinner with her friend group at a new downtown restaurant, I was cautiously optimistic. It had been months since she brought me into her social world, and I thought maybe this was her trying to reconnect. I accepted, hoping this was a turning point. We arrived at the restaurant, a trendy, buzzing place packed to capacity. Our party had a long table near the back, and as luck would have it, I was seated 3 spots away from Melissa. On one side of me was Taylor, one of her more talkative friends, who immediately got absorbed in conversation with someone across the table. On my other side was a guy I didn't know, barely acknowledging me as he scrolled endlessly on his phone. The entire dinner, I felt invisible. No one spoke to me. I wasn't part of the jokes or the stories. I just sat there, slowly sipping my soda, occasionally nodding when someone accidentally made eye contact. I was used to it by now. This was always how these events went. I was Melissa's husband, technically, but socially, I was just a seat filler. I was zoning out, mentally juggling a work deadline I had coming up, when I heard a voice cut through the hum of chatter. Caitlin, one of Melissa's louder friends, asked, "So how's married life treating you these days?" There was something in her tone. It wasn't casual curiosity. It was bait. I glanced over and saw Melissa laugh, not a warm, fond laugh, but a dry, dismissive snort. And then she dropped the line that burned itself into my memory forever. "Oh, please," she said, her voice flat and disinterested. "He's basically just my roommate now, just my roommate." I froze. Halfway to taking a sip of my drink, I sat there, paralyzed. The words echoed in my head like a gunshot. She didn't laugh afterward. She didn't smile like it was a joke. She just said it like it was an accepted truth, like everyone already knew. She even glanced in my direction, clearly seeing that I heard, but she didn't flinch, didn't care. What made it worse, what really twisted the knife, was her friend's reaction. They laughed, nodded. Some of them even agreed. One of them said, "Aren't all husbands just glorified roommates eventually?" More laughter followed, and I sat there, feeling the walls close in. All of them joined in, except one, Olivia. She was relatively new to the group, someone I'd only met once or twice before. She didn't laugh. She looked at me. Not with pity, but with discomfort. Maybe sympathy. Like she understood this was more than just a cruel joke. That look meant everything in that moment. I don't remember much of the dinner after that. Everything became a blur. I went through the motions, eating, nodding, pretending to listen. But my brain was stuck on that one sentence. Just my roommate. Over and over like a broken record. What killed me wasn't just the words. It was the indifference. She didn't check on me. Didn't apologize. Didn't pull me aside later to say she didn't mean it. It was as if I truly were just a piece of furniture in her life, not a partner. The drive home was excruciating. Melissa chatted about the food, the decor, and even gossiped about someone who got too drunk at the table. Like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I sat in the passenger seat numb, like a bomb had gone off inside me and she hadn't even noticed. I barely said a word. My responses on the drive home were limited to grunts, the occasional "yeah," and mostly just silence. Melissa didn't even seem to notice. She was too busy scrolling through Instagram like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just dismantled our entire relationship with a single sentence in front of all her friends. As soon as we stepped through the front door, she tossed her purse on the counter, collapsed onto the couch, and curled up with her phone. She didn't look at me once. She didn't seem uncomfortable, regretful, or anything. She just picked up where her night left off, casually flipping through filtered photos and stories while I stood there, still shell-shocked. I watched her for nearly a full minute, waiting, hoping. Maybe she'd say something, acknowledge the conversation at dinner, offer a half-hearted apology, anything. But no, not even a glance in my direction. And that's when it really hit me, hard. That offhanded comment she made, "just my roommate," wasn't some clumsy joke. It was her reality. That's how she saw me now. Not as a partner, not as her person. Just some guy who lives in the same house, shares a roof, maybe occasionally shares a meal, but nothing more. Just another bill-paying body under the same roof. I couldn't take it anymore. So, Am I really just your roommate now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, doing everything I could to keep calm while every fiber of me was screaming. Melissa didn't even flinch. She looked up with a face full of annoyance, like I'd just interrupted her watching cat videos. What are you even talking about? At dinner, I said. You told your friends I'm just your roommate. She rolled her eyes and went right back to scrolling. Oh my God, it was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. It didn't sound like a joke, I said, quieter now, almost to myself. Well, it was, she snapped. You're seriously blowing this out of proportion. Can we not do this right now? I'm exhausted. And just like that, it was dismissed. No apology, no explanation. She didn't even pretend to care about how it made me feel. Instead, she flipped it on me as if I were the unreasonable one for daring to be hurt. I didn't push it. I didn't want to make things worse. I was still trying to process everything, still trying to understand how the woman I loved could speak about me like I didn't matter. But one thing was clear. Our relationship was no longer a partnership. It was a one-way street, and I was the only one trying. The next morning, everything continued as if nothing had happened. Melissa rushed around the kitchen, half-dressed, coffee in hand, asking if I'd seen her charger. That was the only thing she said to me. No mention of the previous night, no lingering guilt, just routine. I moved through my morning on autopilot. Shower, clothes, coffee, keys. But as I drove to work, the words kept replaying in my mind. Just my roommate. Again and again. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I had been working nonstop for years, doing everything I could to build a good life for both of us. I bought the house we live in. I paid the majority of our bills. I picked up more chores so she could chase her dream job. I sacrificed, I gave, I supported. And how did she see me? As some faceless guy she happens to live with. By the time I pulled into the office parking lot, I had made my decision. If Melissa truly saw me as just a roommate, then that's exactly what she was going to get. During lunch, I opened a brand new bank account. I transferred most of the money from our shared account into it. Not all of it. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I left just enough to cover my share of the monthly expenses. I had always paid about 80% because I made more, but my roommates don't do that. Roommates split things 50-50. That evening, I didn't ask how her day went. I didn't tell her about mine. I said hey out of reflex and went straight to the spare room where I had my gaming setup. Normally, we'd figure out dinner together. That night, I didn't wait. I ordered pizza for one. When the doorbell rang, I grabbed a few slices and went right back to my game. Melissa came into the room a few minutes later, looking confused. Did you order pizza? Where's mine? I didn't even look up. Just got some for myself. Figured you'd grab something if you were hungry. She stared at me like she was waiting for more of an explanation. When I didn't offer one, she just said okay and turned away. A few minutes later, I heard her rummaging in the kitchen. That night was the official start of what I now call Operation Roommate. Over the next 2 weeks, I slowly and methodically stopped doing anything a husband would do. I stopped texting her during the day. I stopped picking up her favorite snacks at the store. I didn't fold her laundry with mine. I stopped offering to grab takeout or asking if she wanted coffee. I didn't tell her where I was going or what time I'd be back. If I cooked for one. If I cleaned, I only cleaned my mess. I became exactly what she said I was, a roommate. At first, she didn't seem to notice, or maybe she did, and just didn't care. She still went out all the time, still came home late, still glued to her phone when she was around me. But around the 8th day, things began to shift. One night she came home, opened the fridge, and sighed dramatically. There's like no food in here? Didn't you go grocery shopping? Without looking up from my laptop, I replied, yeah. My stuff's on the left. She blinked. Your stuff? What about everything else? I just bought what I needed, I said, still focused on my screen. Figured you'd get whatever you like? She made that frustrated huffing sound she always does when things don't go her way. Since when do we buy separate groceries? I finally looked at her. I don't know. Trying something new? Is that a problem? She stared at me, then muttered, whatever, and slammed the fridge shut. A few minutes later, I heard her ordering takeout. But the real drama began just a few days later. 2 weeks into Operation Roommate, I got a text from her in the middle of the day. Hey, I'm thinking of buying these boots. They're like $450, but I'll move some money from the joint account later. Cool? I just stared at the message. She had no idea. She had been obsessing over those designer shoes for weeks, checking the brand site, comparing styles, dropping hints anytime she saw a pair online. So, when her card got declined at checkout, she called me immediately, her voice sharp with frustration. Why is there only $700 in our joint account? She snapped, skipping any greeting. That's your half of the bills for this month, I answered calmly, as if we were discussing the weather. My half? What the hell are you talking about? She shot back. Where's the rest of our money? I opened a separate account, I said evenly. From now on, the joint account is just for shared expenses. My salary goes into my own account. There was a long, stunned silence on her end. Then, you moved our money without telling me? Seriously, Jake, what the hell? It wasn't our money, I said. It was my paycheck. You've got your job. I've got mine. But we've always shared finances, she argued, her voice rising. You don't just make that kind of decision on your own? I nearly laughed. Right. Kinda like you made the decision to demote me from husband to roommate in front of your entire friend group? I guess things change. She went quiet for a beat, her tone shifting from angry to confused. What are you even talking about? Nothing, I muttered. Just know that I put your half of the bills in the joint account. You're responsible for covering the rest. Whatever money you make is yours, just like mine is mine. She started to reply, but I cut her off. I've got a meeting. Talk later. I ended the call. Later that night, Melissa stormed through the door, slamming it harder than necessary. I was in the living room, half watching a movie, half waiting for this moment. She marched in, stood directly in front of the TV, arms tightly crossed. We need to talk. Now what the hell is going on with you? I picked up the remote and muted the screen, leaning back into the couch. What's up? Don't what's up me, she snapped. You know what's up, the money, the groceries, the way you've been acting. What's your deal? I gave a small shrug. No deal, just making some changes. Changes? Without even talking to me? That's not how a marriage works, Jake. And that was all I needed. My cue. Oh, so we're in a marriage now? I asked, sitting up straighter and meeting her eyes. That's interesting, because I remember you telling your friends that I'm just your roommate. I'm just doing my part to fulfill that role. Her expression shifted rapidly. First shock, then defensiveness, then guilt. It was a joke, she muttered. I didn't mean it like that. It didn't sound like a joke, I said, my voice low. Didn't look like one either. Your friends seemed to take it pretty seriously, too. She scoffed. It was just girl talk. You're reading way too much into it. Am I? I asked. Or am I just reacting to how you've been treating me? Because for months, you've barely spoken to me. Always out with friends, always glued to your phone, no effort, no connection. I'm just returning the energy. She narrowed her eyes. So this is revenge? That's your big plan? Real mature, Jake. It's not revenge, I said. It's reality. Roommates don't merge finances. They don't do each other's laundry or cook each other's meals. They don't check in during the day or plan dinners together. They just coexist. That's what you said we were, so I'm just embracing the truth. She opened her mouth to respond, but clearly couldn't decide on what to say. After a moment, she huffed in frustration, threw her hands in the air and walked out, muttering about how ridiculous I was being. But something changed after that night. Subtle at first. Melissa started texting me in the middle of the day, asking what I was up to. She suggested we order food together instead of fending for ourselves. She even asked me about work, about how I was feeling. All things she hadn't done in what felt like forever. It felt like she was scrambling to rewind the tape, to undo the damage. But for me, it was too little, too late. She didn't realize that Operation Roommate had only just begun. I had more in store. 3 weeks into the new dynamic, something unexpected happened. I was waiting for my coffee at a local cafe near the office when I heard someone say my name. I turned around and saw Olivia, the only one of Melissa's friends who looked uncomfortable during that awful dinner conversation. "Jake, right?" she asked, walking toward me. "Melissa's husband?" I nodded, a little surprised. "Yeah, hey, Olivia," she smiled. "Didn't expect you to remember me." Hard to forget the only person who looked like they had a soul at that dinner. That made her laugh softly. "Fair. I come here most mornings. Better than the office stuff." There was a brief, awkward silence. Then she spoke again. "I've actually been meaning to reach out. What Melissa said at dinner, that wasn't cool. I just wanted you to know, not everyone was okay with it." I was honestly pretty shocked. For a second, I just stared at her. It felt strange hearing someone acknowledge it. "Thanks," I said. "That really means a lot." She hesitated. "Are you guys okay?" I know it's not really my place, but I gave a neutral shrug. "We're figuring things out." I wasn't about to dump all my personal baggage onto someone I barely knew, but I appreciated the concern. "Well," Olivia said with a soft smile, "for what it's worth, you seem like a decent guy. I hope things work out." That made me genuinely smile. Something I hadn't done in weeks. "Thanks, Olivia, really." We ended up sitting together for about 15 minutes chatting. Turned out she was a physical therapist who had just moved to the city a few months ago. She met Melissa's friend group through a mutual acquaintance. She was easy to talk to, attentive, and grounded. It was the first time in ages that I felt like someone was genuinely interested in me, not just waiting for their turn to speak. As we stood to leave, she paused, then pulled out a napkin and wrote something on it. "I know this might be a little weird," she said, holding it out to me, "but if you ever need someone to talk to, just someone neutral, here's my number." I hesitated. Was this crossing a line? Maybe. I didn't know what her intentions were, but nothing about her vibe felt inappropriate or pushy. It felt human, kind. I took the napkin and folded it into my pocket. "Thanks, Enkeen," I said. "I might take you up on that." A few days later, I found myself in the middle of one of those soul-draining afternoons where everything just grinds you down. Work had been a mess, meetings that went nowhere, a mountain of emails, and nothing productive to show for it. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Melissa had been increasingly irritable about the whole roommate situation. She tossed out snide remarks about how I was being childish, how splitting expenses was petty, how she missed when I acted like an adult. It was rich, hearing that from someone who treated our marriage like a networking arrangement. I thought I was done being surprised until I got an email alert. A $500 charge had gone through on our joint credit card. The very card I had explicitly told her I'd canceled months ago. A luxury purse, no less. And I didn't even need to ask who made the purchase. I was sitting in my car, parked outside the office, My jaw clenched so tight I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard like it had wronged me. My thoughts spun in every direction. I couldn't believe the audacity. After everything, she was still spending my money like nothing had changed. That's when I remembered Olivia's number, her voice, her kindness, her calm presence. They all surfaced in my mind at once. I pulled out my phone and typed, "Hey, it's Jake. Is that offer to talk still open?" She replied within minutes, "Absolutely, everything okay?" I didn't even hesitate. We met for coffee after work. I hadn't planned to vent. I really didn't. But something about sitting across from Olivia, her eyes warm, her expression gentle, no expectations, no judgment, just unlocked something in me. It all came pouring out, every moment. From the first time Melissa dismissed me to a joke, to Operation Roommate, to the financial split, to the purse, to the growing chasm in our home. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. She listened deeply, like every word I said mattered. Occasionally, she'd ask a soft question, clarifying something or helping me unpack the tangled feelings. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Olivia sighed, looking genuinely troubled. "I don't know Melissa super well," she said, "but from what I've picked up in the group, she talks about you a lot differently when you're not there." My stomach turned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "She complains, says you're boring. She feels like she has settled, that she's stuck." I sat back in my chair. It felt like someone had punched me in the ribs. "Wow. I'm sorry," Olivia said quickly. "I shouldn't have brought it up. I just thought you should know." "I'm glad you did," I said, and I meant it. I'd rather know the truth than keep living in a fantasy. As we stood to leave, Olivia reached out and touched my arm. "Jake, you deserve someone who actually sees you. Someone proud to be with you, not someone who treats you like a chore." That stuck with me, long after I left the coffee shop. Her words echoed in my mind over and over. Someone proud to be with you. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. We started texting after that. At first, it was light, comments about bad coffee, memes, and annoying coworkers, but it grew. Quickly, inside jokes, venting about our days, checking in on each other. And it wasn't just conversation. It was connection. Real, unfiltered connection. It felt like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a smoke-filled room. Meanwhile, Melissa remained oblivious. She was still out 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Her phone rarely left her hand, and when it did, it was always face down. She came home late, usually smelling like a mix of perfume and a cologne that wasn't mine. I wasn't stupid. I've been cheated on before, in college by someone I trusted. I swore I'd never become the guy who snoops, who accuses blindly, but there's a difference between paranoia and seeing a pattern too obvious to ignore. Melissa was checking every box: secretive phone behavior, sudden new friends I'd never met, dressing up for what she claimed were team meetings, staying out well past midnight, and that lingering scent on her clothes. I couldn't explain it away anymore. Still, I needed proof. I tried to confront her directly. One morning, while she was scrolling through her phone during breakfast, I asked, "So, who's this new work buddy you've been seeing a lot lately?" She didn't even glance up. "Just some folks from marketing, nothing exciting." "Seems like you're spending a lot of time with them," I said, testing the waters. She rolled her eyes. "What? Are you checking up on me now?" "I thought we were just roommates," I said, raising an eyebrow. She smirked, making exaggerated air quotes. "Roommates." I got my answer. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to find it myself. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought an AirTag. It's a tiny Apple tracker, usually used to find lost keys or luggage. People also use them to track bags, bikes, or in my case, cheating spouses. I waited for the perfect moment. One lazy Sunday morning, Melissa was still asleep. Her keys were on the counter, as usual. In less than a minute, I slipped the AirTag into the change compartment of her car's center console. She never touched that space. That evening, she texted like clockwork, "Working late. Don't wait up." At 6 p.m., I opened the Find My app on my phone. Her car wasn't going toward her office downtown. It was heading north to a luxury apartment complex far from the city's business district. She parked there at 6:45 p.m. and stayed until well past midnight. The next day, same story. She said she had dinner with coworkers. Her car was parked at the same building from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Then Thursday came. Client dinner, she said. At 6:30 p.m., her car was back at the same place. She didn't leave until almost midnight again. That was 3 nights in a single week. All lies, all confirmed. During this time, I was still texting Olivia. I didn't tell her about the AirTag. I wasn't ready to share that, but I did let her know Melissa was lying again. She responded with empathy, but caution. "Are you sure you want to know the truth? Sometimes it hurts more than it helps." "I need to know," I replied. "I'm done being treated like a fool." I decided it was time to take the final step. The following Tuesday, Melissa once again claimed she had a late work meeting. I kept my face neutral and told her I had plans too, that I was meeting some guys from work for drinks and wouldn't be back until late. That was, of course, a complete lie. Instead, I parked my car a few blocks from the upscale apartment complex I had tracked her to before. I switched off the engine and waited. At exactly 6:30 p.m., like clockwork, Melissa's car rolled into the lot. I watched from a distance as she parked, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, reapplied some lipstick, and then stepped out. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her outfit, and walked confidently toward one of the buildings. I watched her type a code into the door keypad and disappear inside. I sat there gripping my steering wheel, debating what to do next. Part of me wanted to follow her, storm into the building, and catch her red-handed, confront her and whoever was behind that door, scream, demand answers. But what would that really accomplish? A dramatic explosion? More emotional chaos? I wasn't interested in theatrics. I just needed confirmation, something concrete. So instead of storming in, I took photos. Her car in the lot, the apartment building she entered, the timestamp on my phone. I exhaled deeply, started the engine, and drove home. That was it. I had all the proof I needed. My wife was cheating on me. Now came the hardest part. What was I going to do about it? On the drive home, I called Olivia. When she picked up, my voice was low but steady. "You were right. About everything." "Oh, Jake," she said softly, her voice full of empathy. "I'm so sorry. What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But one thing's for sure. I'm done being her roommate." That night, I didn't even pretend. I slept in the spare room. Melissa didn't return until after midnight. She didn't check to see if I was home, didn't notice or care that I wasn't in bed with her. The next morning, I called in sick. There was no way I could focus on reports and meetings while my marriage crumbled around me. Instead, I spent the morning searching for divorce lawyers. I found one with excellent reviews and managed to get an appointment that afternoon. When I met with Richard, my lawyer, I laid everything out: the house, the finances, the distance, the roommate comment, and finally, the affair. After I finished, I asked the only question that mattered. "So, where do I stand here?" He leaned back in his chair, considering it all. "Legally, you're in a strong position. The house is in your name, and since you bought it before the marriage, it's likely considered separate property. No children make this cleaner. Virginia allows fault-based divorce, and adultery can work in your favor if needed." The real issue is, do you want this to be contentious? I thought for a long moment, then shook my head. No drama. I just want out. Smart man, he said with a nod. The guys who want revenge usually end up paying me a lot more. Let's draft the paperwork. In the meantime, keep documenting everything, her absences, evidence of the affair, and financial statements. Don't tell her anything until we're ready. I paid the retainer and left the office feeling strangely light. Like for the first time in months, I had direction. I was doing something about the mess. When I got home, I had a text from Olivia. Thinking about you, how are you holding up? I asked if she wanted to meet for coffee, and she agreed. We picked a quiet little cafe in a neighboring town, one where none of Melissa's friends would spot us. She looked up as I walked in, concern written all over her face. You look exhausted, she said gently. Haven't been sleeping much, I admitted, stirring my coffee absently. I met with a divorce lawyer today. Her eyes widened. Wow, that was fast. Once I knew for sure it wasn't a hard decision. Truth is, our marriage has been dead for months. She nodded slowly. Still, it's a big step. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It was brief, but it was the first meaningful touch I'd felt from anyone in what felt like forever. It grounded me. What happens now? She asked. My lawyer's drafting the papers. I'm collecting evidence. Then I'll serve her and ask her to move out. She's not going to take that well. I shrugged. Too bad. She should have thought about that before cheating on me. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Not just about the divorce, but everything. Our jobs, families, funny stories, and favorite movies. It wasn't a date, but it felt safe. Real? I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. When we finally stood to leave, she hugged me tightly. You're going to be okay, Jake. Probably better than okay. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed her. Over the next few days, I became a man on a mission. I compiled screenshots of bank statements showing I paid nearly every expense. I downloaded statements from Melissa's credit card, fancy restaurants, hotel rooms, late-night charges that clearly weren't spent on girls' nights out. I exported the AirTag tracking history, time-stamped and mapped. I placed everything neatly into a labeled folder for Richard. Melissa remained completely oblivious. She kept up her usual routine, late nights, vague explanations, disappearing for entire weekends. Her audacity didn't even make me angry anymore. It just solidified that I was doing the right thing. During that week, Olivia and I texted every day. Never anything inappropriate. We were just two people, supporting each other through rough waters. She told me about her complicated family, shared stories from past relationships, and laughed at my dumb jokes. She made me feel like I wasn't alone. One night, I opened up to her about a painful memory from years ago. Something I hadn't told anyone in years. She listened like it mattered. And that meant everything. A week after my meeting with the lawyer, Richard called. The papers are ready. He advised serving Melissa when she wouldn't expect it, ideally with a neutral witness. You want someone there who can verify how it went down, he explained, especially if she gets emotional or lashes out. Without hesitation, I asked Olivia, would you mind being there when I serve her? She didn't even blink. Of course, whatever you need. I'll be there. I set the date for Friday night. Melissa would be home soon. Time to end this farce of a marriage once and for all. Friday arrived faster than I expected. That morning, I went over the plan with my lawyer again, rehearsing every detail, what to say, how to respond to different reactions, what to avoid. He handed me the divorce papers sealed in a manila envelope, absurdly light for something so heavy. Throughout the day, Olivia kept sending me encouraging texts, short and simple. You got this. Stay strong. I'll be there. It helped more than I expected. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my house at 6 p.m. Melissa usually came home around 7 p.m. on Fridays, unless she went straight to her mystery man's place. The plan was for Olivia to head over to my place around 6:30, and then we'd wait. When we met at the coffee shop, we didn't say much, just sipped our drinks and killed time. At 6:25, we got in our cars and drove to my house. Olivia pulled up in a luxury SUV I didn't expect, sleek, expensive looking, but not flashy. When we stepped into the house, I hesitated. Having her there felt strange at first. Melissa's old friend, now standing in the house Melissa and I once called ours. But Olivia wasn't really her friend anymore. And this wasn't our home. It was just mine now. I gave her a quick tour, mostly just pointing out things to fill the silence. She smiled that calm, patient smile of hers. "Jake, you don't have to give me the real estate agent walkthrough. I'm just here for moral support." I laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of my neck. "Yeah, I guess I'm not used to someone actually wanting to be here." She tilted her head slightly, studying me, like she was seeing through my words. As we stopped in the living room, she reached out without warning and straightened the collar of my shirt. Her touch was light, familiar, almost intimate in a way that caught me off guard. My breath hitched, but she didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. "There," she said softly, smoothing the fabric. "You're all set." I swallowed, ignoring the warmth creeping up my neck. "Thanks." She just grinned and flopped onto the couch like she belonged there. Anytime. And just like that, something shifted. I started seeing Olivia differently. Not just as Melissa's old friend, not just as someone being kind, but someone real, someone who saw me. Around 7:10, we heard Melissa's car pull into the driveway. Olivia and I were seated in the living room, the divorce papers spread neatly on the coffee table. The front door opened. Melissa walked in, businesslike as ever. She took a few steps into the room before she saw us and froze. Her eyes darted between me and Olivia. "What's going on?" she asked sharply. "Why is she here?" I stood. "We need to talk, Melissa." Her expression twisted. "Why is she here for that?" "This is our house. She's here as a witness," I replied, lifting the manila envelope and letting its weight settle in the air between us before handing it over. Melissa crossed her arms. "A witness for what?" I handed her the envelope. "I'm filing for divorce." Her face fell. For a second, she looked like she couldn't compute the words. "Divorce?" she echoed, then let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're serious? Over your little roommate's tantrum?" I didn't flinch. "Number because you've been cheating on me." For months, she laughed again, but this one sounded hollow. "That's ridiculous. I'm not cheating." "Don't," I interrupted. "I know about the guy at Parkview Apartments. I know how often you're there." Her face went pale. "You followed me?" "What the hell, Jake?" I shook my head, calm. "Didn't need to. I have proof. Weeks of it. Every fake work event. Every fake girls' night out. It all points to the same place." Her gaze flicked to Olivia, then back to me. Her face twisted with rage. "You tracked me? That's insane. And you brought her here for this?" She pointed at Olivia like her presence was an act of betrayal. Olivia didn't react. She didn't have to. I wasn't going to let Melissa flip the script. "Olivia has nothing to do with this," I said, voice steady. "This is about you, your choices, and the fact that you got caught." Melissa crossed her arms tighter, her voice suddenly lower, more pleading. "So I messed up." "People mess up, Jake. That doesn't mean you throw it all away." Her tone softened. Her eyes found mine. "We can fix this. Counseling. A fresh start. I'll stop seeing him. Just let's talk about this. Alone." She shot Olivia a glare that could have shattered glass. That's when I leaned back and delivered the final blow. "Why are you upset anyway?" I asked, voice cool. "I'm just your roommate, right? Isn't that what you said?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "That dinner? You're still mad about that?" "It was a joke." I nodded slowly, mock understanding. "Oh, right, a joke. Hilarious." Then I tilted my head, letting the sarcasm drip. "Just checking, do you usually joke about replacing your husband with another man?" Her jaw clenched. But I wasn't done. "You were right, though," I continued. "We are just roommates, and since I'm the one paying most of the rent—" I gestured toward the door. "Yeah, I'm going to need you to pack up and get the hell out of my house." That was the moment everything shattered for her. Melissa completely lost it. Tears streaming down her face, voice rising into a shrill storm of accusations and insults. She screamed, cried, hurled things across the room, flailing through the entire spectrum of emotional manipulation in under 5 minutes. She called me selfish, heartless, ungrateful, every insult in the book. Then, like flipping a switch, she started begging, pleading, saying she didn't mean anything by it, that she'd made mistakes, But I'd heard it all before. It might have worked once, when I still believed we had something to salvage. But not anymore. "Where am I supposed to go?" she cried out, as if it were somehow my job to solve that for her. I shrugged coldly. "I don't know. Maybe your boyfriend's place? You've spent enough time there, it seems like a logical option." That made her even more furious. She hurled one last insult and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame came crashing off the wall. Olivia, who had remained calm and silent through the chaos, helped me pick up the mess. "Well," I said dryly, trying to crack a smile, "that went about as well as expected." Olivia gave me a supportive smile, the kind that says, "You did well. You stood your ground. That's what matters," she said gently. The next day, Melissa came back, this time with her friend Taylor, and acted like she could just waltz back in like nothing had happened. What she didn't expect was the locks being changed. They stood outside, ringing the bell and banging on the door, while calling my phone repeatedly. I didn't answer. I just texted her calmly, "You can come pick up your stuff on Saturday. I'll have someone with me." Saturday arrived, and with it, my brother Mike. I was glad he came early, because Melissa didn't come alone. Taylor was with her again, and this time they brought Melissa's dad. Clearly, she thought adding a bit of pressure might change my stance. Her father came at me aggressively right out of the gate. "You have no right to throw my daughter out of her own home." I kept my expression neutral and my voice steady. "Actually, I have every legal right. The house is in my name. I bought it before the marriage. And your daughter was unfaithful. But hey, if you'd prefer we sort this out in court, where all the evidence of her affair becomes public record, I'm totally fine with that." He went silent instantly, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. That shut him down quickly. Melissa didn't say much while she packed her things, but at one point, when Taylor and her dad weren't paying attention, she pulled me aside. Eyes wide, voice low and trembling, she whispered, "I made a mistake. I want to fix this. Please, Jake, don't give up on us." I didn't even respond. I just turned and walked away. After that, the divorce moved surprisingly fast. Once her lawyer saw the extent of my documentation, financial records, messages, photos, timestamps, there was no fight left to give. Everything was wrapped up in 4 months. A short timeline, considering the emotional wreckage. And the irony? I heard from a mutual acquaintance that the guy she left me for dumped her about 2 weeks after she moved in. Apparently, he was fine playing the side piece, but wasn't interested in a real relationship. So Melissa, at 28, ended up moving back in with her parents, the same ones who had insisted I was the villain. Meanwhile, things with Olivia, well, it's complicated, but in a good way. We got closer during everything. We officially started dating about a month after Melissa moved out. Once I felt like I'd emotionally moved on. Olivia was patient, supportive. She gave me space when I needed it, but was there when I crumbled. And she's incredible, funny, intuitive, wicked smart. She calls me out when I need it, but also builds me up like nobody else ever has. It's strange in a way, the ease with which we connect. We're not rushing anything. She stays over sometimes, but we're not moving in together. We're just letting it happen naturally. She's even helping me redecorate the house. Melissa's style always leaned toward dramatic and gaudy. Olivia's taste is more subtle, elegant. Earth tones, soft lighting, modern lines. The home feels different now, not just visually, energetically. The most surreal part, a couple weeks ago, Olivia and I were having dinner downtown at this cozy little restaurant. The lighting was soft, the music gentle, everything just felt right. And then, guess who walked in? Melissa, with some new guy. She spotted us instantly and made a beeline for our table. Her smile was the fakest thing I'd ever seen. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, glancing between us. "Didn't take you long to move on, huh?" Before I could even speak, Olivia looked her dead in the eye and said calmly, "He's not just my roommate, Melissa. He's my everything." The look on Melissa's face, utter shock. She stood there stunned, her mouth open like she'd forgotten how to speak. Her date looked at her awkwardly and started tugging her away. Eventually, they turned and walked off. I couldn't stop grinning. Olivia looked at me, slightly sheepish. "Too much?" "No," I said, taking her hand. "Perfect amount." So that's where things stand now. Divorce finalized. The house is mine again, and I'm dating someone who actually sees me, respects me, and values me. Is life perfect? Of course not. Divorce is expensive, draining. It tears you up in ways you don't expect, even when you know it's the right thing. But I'm happier than I've been in years. Sometimes I think back to that dinner, when Melissa laughed and said I was just her roommate. At the time, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. Now I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Funny how life works out.